So one of the things I want to look at in this episode is, to what extent is our mind, like the human mind, an individual thing? Like we often think of it, this is our mind. And to what extent is it actually a collective mind, a social mind, a mind that is determined by a wider group, if you like, rather than it being just our mind? And so, in thinking of this issue, I'm drawn really to thinking about what certain cults do. And what's a very common practice amongst cults? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, when you join the cult, very quickly they will try to separate you from your wider associations, your family, other friends outside of the cult. And the second thing that they'll do is that if you should leave the cult, then all the people that you've known over the years and all the people that you've known are other people who are inside the cult are instructed to then disown you. So that when you leave the cult, you leave everybody. You leave your entire social circle, everybody that you now know and depend upon in terms of your social life. You're cut off from them all when you decide, I don't think I agree with this anymore. This doesn't fly for me. I think I'll leave. You don't just leave that belief system, you leave everybody. And one of the reasons that they do this is because they're understanding to what extent our minds are a social thing, or a social mind rather than just an individual mind. Because what happens when we're changing our belief systems and what happens when we're deciding what it is that we believe, there is a social element to that. Simply because when we're humans and we're a pack animal, there's an element to that which means that what our brain is kind of calculating is, well, how will I fit into the wider group? What's going to happen to my tribe here? Am I still going to fit in with everyone? And so there's a real punitive effect there of changing your mind. And so I wanted to raise that because it has some implications about when we decide to change our mind, when we decide to change our own core beliefs. And you'll probably have already heard of the research which shows that we're basically the average of the 5 people around us. Even to the point where if we start hanging round with a group of people who weigh less than us, then we'll probably drop a couple of pounds. And so this sense of our mind being a collective thing, that it's actually, our mind is a social mind rather than an individual one, is backed up by that kind of research too. And so it makes sense then, doesn't it, that when we think of, this is the other thing as well, that it's very common within organisations and communities of people, this sense of groupthink is another representation of this idea that maybe our mind isn't just our own, but is a collective mind as much as it is an individual one. And so it's useful to think of this, because when it comes to changing our own beliefs, when it comes to, which is often what change is about, isn't it? We'll change our beliefs, our frame of reference, our belief about ourselves, the permissions even that we give ourselves in life are all part of this kind of changing our core beliefs. When we're wanting to do that as part of, say, therapeutic work, There's a question in terms of if our mind is a collective mind as well as an individual mind, what does that actually mean for us socially? So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're wanting to give up smoking. So that's one of the things that you want to change. You want to change your behavior around smoking, and you want to change your beliefs around it as well. And so in order to kind of change your mind about the value of smoking cigarettes, well, imagine if, for instance, I don't know, you're in work, you're in your office or whatever, and about 10:30 in the morning, all your friends who smoke go downstairs and they have a cigarette break together, and they're all outside puffing away on their cigarettes, having a lovely little chat. When it comes to giving up cigarettes, you're not just giving up cigarettes, you're giving up that social moment where all of your friends are there, and now suddenly you're not. And so it can be really hard to create change if it means losing your little tribe. And this is the thing that cults understand so effectively. It's going to be really hard for you to change your mind if it means that you lose your tribe of people. And so if we understand this, what can we do in order to make the change that we want a lot easier? Well, to some extent, when we're changing our mind, we need to ensure that we've got a new tribe to go to. I mean, it's not an absolute necessity, but it certainly smooths the way, because your brain won't be thinking, hang on, you're going to be losing all of these kind of support structures. So it can be helpful when we're changing to think, okay, who are the people in my circle who are going to be much more accepting of this new belief that I want about myself? Who is going to be the group of people who's going to think, yeah, it's okay for you to view yourself as important? Because if we can identify those people and bring them closer to us, the chances are that it will actually make that change a lot easier. It's really quite difficult to make change if the brain realizes that in order to give up this view of ourselves, this core belief about the world, which is actually getting in our way, and we know it's getting in our way, but to give that up, we have to give up our tribe and move into loneliness instead. The brain will be very resistant to that. And so one of the ways that we can make change more easy is to consciously do the opposite of, stand counter to what the cult does, to actually use that kind of understanding to our advantage and say, okay, who are the people in my circle who are going to be much more accepting of this new belief that I really want, that will stop me from getting in my own way? Who are the people who are going to be much more receptive and accepting of that? Of using the fact that understanding that we have as much of a collective mind as an individual one. What is the collective that we want around us that is going to be a welcoming tribe to the version of me who has this new belief? And then you can ease your way. Because often changing our mind can be about changing the people around us as well. It's very, very difficult, isn't it, to be that person who gives up smoking if it means giving up all their friends. It'd be a lot easier if that person were to bring some of the non-smokers a little closer to them, so that when they lose that friendship group, they've got this other one. It's very difficult to change our mind if the reward is isolation. And I'm reminded in this as well that I can't quite remember his name, but there's a black musician in America, and he has a collection of the robes of Klansmen that he has converted. So you've got people who are members of the Ku Klux Klan, and his strategy was to befriend them. And the reason that he did that is because he realised that it's going to be very, very hard to leave the Klan. It's going to be very, very hard to change your mind on that sort of stuff if they're the people who are around you. And so he befriended them. He gave them a route out through friendship. And so in a similar way, it's helpful sometimes just to look at who are the people in your wider circle that you can give yourself a way out of one belief into another belief by friendship, really, by adding new people to your friendship group, by bringing certain people closer who are going to be much more accepting of the change that you want to make. And so I just think it's an interesting way of looking at the mind, because we think this is my mind. And yet to a large extent, it's a mind that is a shared mind, a collective mind. And I suppose this is really why we form our beliefs as we did in the first instance, shaped largely by those in our environment, because we desperately need to be part of a pack, because we're a pack animal. And so when we're undergoing change ourselves, one of the things our brain will want to do is keep us in the pack. And so if you can reassure your brain that you have a pack that you will still be a part of, even with this new belief, then it smooths the way, because you're not trading this old belief that gets in your way for isolation. You're simply trading this old belief for a new belief that is going to serve you better, without the cost of losing your pack in the meantime. And so have a think, who are the people in your circle who are going to be most welcoming to the changes that you're thinking of making? Who are the people maybe, like where do they congregate? Even if you don't know them, who are going to be most likely to accept this new belief and maybe even to believe it too. And maybe bring those closer to you. Because while we can change anyway, there are no limits on us really in terms of the change. It smooths the path if we know that we're not going to have that social cost from having the change. Because in many ways, changing our mind is about giving ourselves a different tribe to be part of, that is going to be accepting of the changes that we want to make. So if you like this idea, feel free to pass it on. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. You can go to Psychotherapy.com to watch these on video. And you could work with me directly. I'm Alun Parry from the Liverpool Psychotherapy practice at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.